be an HB fan.
Well, look who just showed up in our box score. Fox 40 sports reporter, Kings insider Sean Cunningham. Sean, my boy. Thanks
my
for
boy.
Yeah. Got to ask you, Sean, before we get any further, the Kings are about to play their 40th season. So we're starting our efforts to name the top 40 Sacramento Kings of all time. And we're, it's wide open right now. Just wondering off the top of your head, you think HB belongs on that list?
Oh man. That's a good question. If he is, I think he'd be in the probably 35 to 40 range, perhaps maybe 30 to 40 range without giving it too much thought. Yeah, I could see it. I think just because he'd been here for so long, and you're kind of hard pressed in the Sacramento era to find guys that have been here for so long. Here's a crazy question. This is gonna make fans cringe, but Jason Thompson, right? All the games he started, he had been here for such a long time. If you go through a lot of the records, he's kind of in the conversation for rebounds and games played and things like that. So I could see it. It would be I think much like Jason Thompson, I think people would cringe at Harrison Barnes being in it, but that just kind of shows you how the Sacramento history of the Kings have been in the 40 years of time in the capital city.
Yeah, Sean, I wanted to do the top 100, and Drapes and Jay kind of shook their head and said, I don't think we can do 100.
I'm not going to be debating whether Jamias Ramsey should be 99 or 98, Sean. That's I don't want to get to that point. Corey Joseph, is he number 100 or 101? Does he make the list? Nah, I don't want to get to that point.
Here comes Mike Poplawski. Right. Where does he fall? That'll be a good one.
Right. You posted some more interesting scheduling tidbits today, and Kings fans, being Kings fans, we get upset about perceived injustices. So the Kings are going to play 5 of the first 7 on the road and 6 of their last 9 on the road as well, right, Sean?
Yeah, that's right. And I think, to have a start and finish like that, I almost feel like, there's people who think that the schedule makers hate them, but I also feel like it's, you made the playoffs 2 years ago, you snapped the streak, you have a similar record, and you almost make the playoffs last year. You're in the the play-in tournament, or the play-in tournament, and trying to make a push. So kind of earn it a little bit. And I think, having a schedule like that, also with, just a handful of national TV games, 7, if you count the NBA TV broadcast, which a lot of people don't like to do. But going from 22 national broadcasts to 7 is a little bit of make yourself earn it again, make yourself be part of the conversation. DeMar DeRozan, obviously, that's going to bring a lot of attention. And I like to always point out that those national TV games, they're not set in stone. You can kind of earn your way back. You had some taken away last. You can kind of earn your way into the conversation. And I kind of like the fact for the Kings that they don't have any until after the turn of the calendar year. So there's some opportunity to be had. And I think if they get off to a hot start with that schedule to begin with so many road games, things could go well for them.
Sean Cunningham joining the drive, guys. Sean, I'm going to assume you have the schedule. And I could be wrong, though. I could be wrong, but I'm going to assume you do. Why are you just giving us bits and pieces, big fella? Why don't you create a fake Twitter handle or something like that and just give us the whole meal? Well, you're giving us side dishes right now, appetizers.
Yeah, well, I can say now because I did obtain the schedule today. I didn't have the schedule prior today, so I did have a lot of stuff being sent my way, which was great. But there's also a level of realizing that things are subject to change with the schedule. So there's things that I want to make sure that I don't get wrong journalistically, and make sure you're kind of checking a lot of boxes throughout the process. But yeah, I feel really good about it. That's why there's still coming from sources, and try to do as much due diligence as I can on that with the journalistic side of things. But yeah, there's every year we kind of go through some of these things, and I don't want to necessarily throw it all out there and then have some maybe inaccuracies once the schedule day comes. But I try to make sure the stuff I'm most confident about. And I got beat on a couple things. I'll take you behind the scenes a little bit, and I didn't want to do what I did today, which is shotgun a few things. I kind of wanted to put one in all kind of one post, but that's okay. I think it's still fun for the fans to be able to try to make kind of mark their calendars, make little situations if they have to travel, or if they want to go see somebody on the road, and obviously those special moments like Harrison Barnes DeMar DeRozan, and I still think it's special when guys like Tyrese Halliburton and Buddy Hield come back, and we'll know when those would take place.
Sean, follow up for you. Does it piss you off or bother you if somebody else puts it out first or leaks something first, or is there a competitive nature with schedule release?
Not necessarily with the schedule. With other stuff, for absolutely.
Right,
I mean, the schedule is such a, it's not one of the things I get overly competitive about. Maybe earlier in my career, because you really try to notch your belt with a lot of things that you're able to accomplish in the industry. But when it comes to the schedule, I mean, not so much. I mean, I think with other moves and something like today, I had a very small, it's a small story in the grand scheme of things, but knowing I covered a guy like Skal Labissiere when he was here in Sacramento, and just the path that he has, and for people who may not have seen the report, to know that he's back in the organization, having an Exhibit 10 contract, which will afford him the opportunity to hopefully make some noise, but he'll certainly be back with the Stockton Kings, which he did last year. And if anyone's followed his career, it's a really a crazy tale of up and down, and his connection to, I mean, this is a guy who was in the Haiti earthquake and grew up in Memphis, and acquired, who was for the first 3 years of anyone knowing who he was, people thought he'd be a number 1 pick in the draft, and he falls to, I think it was 28th, Phoenix by way of trade, ends up in Sacramento. So just a long-winded way of saying I get more competitive with stuff like that, even if it's a smaller move, because somebody I covered and somebody that meant something to this organization at one point, who people thought had some promise, and to see what he did last year and go to not only be in the G League and kind of resurrect his career again, but he made it to what's known as really the up next game. That's like the G League All-Star game. They get to feature themselves in All-Star weekend, and he got to play in that game. So I love stories like that, man. They're so great. And if I had gotten beat on that one, I would have been more upset.
Sean Cunningham with us from Fox 40. I remember when he was a rookie, when Skal was a rookie, their other rookie was Malachi Richardson, and I was trying to make Skal and Mal a thing. The team wasn't playing well. It's time to play Skal and Mal, and it turned out it really wasn't. Right. But to what extent, Sean, are the Kings looking to fortify the front court at some point this season? Are they looking at the guys that we all think they should be looking at?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that was the thing we've all talked about ad nauseum, was length and athleticism and physicality, and having a bruiser, or kind of a guy who can give Domantas Sabonis some help. But however they end up getting there, I mean, I think they look at it as never a finished product, and you have opportunity to do so. But when, I think landing, a talented player like DeMar DeRozan might change a few things, but it in the calculus of how it gets built, and certainly the recipe, but I think there's still opportunity to do so. I think it's going to be tougher to do as training camp nears, but if you remember, and not that these were big moves at the time, but watching them last year sign, they can go up to 21 roster players for training camp, and watching them sign initially a Nerlens Noel, and then Neemias Queta, and then late in the game they add JaVale McGee, and then have to depart those two. Just interesting to see how that ends up happening. And obviously we've got the Orlando Robinson signing just the other day that became official, and he obviously brings a much needed presence, and that might be someone who can vie for the backup role and compete with Alex Len, and even Alex Len, who might be second on that depth chart. Well, we know Alex Len doesn't play every game, right? So I think there's some intrigue there. I think there's some opportunity for some guys. We don't know what Jaden McDaniel's situation totally looks like, coming off a really awful year. So I think there's a lot of intrigue and promise, and some question marks, but can they go out there and find a veteran presence of fortify their some size? I think that's still sorely needed on this team, and maybe they enter the season with that still being a question mark, with hopes of crossing that off the list later on in the season.
Hey, Sean, what's the biggest question mark you think going into this? Or should I say, who is the biggest question mark on this team?
Oh, man. I've been asking myself that a lot, to be honest with you, Kyle. I'm glad you asked that question, because it makes me feel like I'm not losing my mind here in August and trying to ask.
right.
Because I can see how a lot of people would say Keegan Murray, and I can see how people would say the addition of DeMar DeRozan, and how that fits with a guy who is almost equally criticized throughout the league in Domantas Sabonis, and just him being maybe your second or third best player, and how this all fits. To me, I think it kind of comes down more to Keegan Murray, because whether the Kings try to change the way they play, at least you know what DeMar DeRozan's about. He's had this evolution of his game where he's become a playmaker. He's been able to kind of become more of a corner 3 threat for a guy who's been an elite mid-range player. But the guy to me that is still the question mark, and because his game is still evolving, you don't quite know yet what happens with Keegan Murray, and you don't know how the addition of DeMar DeRozan either helps or hurts his opportunity on the offensive end. So that to me, I think might be the biggest question mark to me, just because, at 35 years old, we're going to know what DeMar DeRozan is. I'm just wondering if DeMar DeRozan needs to be a different type of player than what we've seen in the past few years. I just know they're going to be a fun fourth quarter team, though. I mean, you got guys that are willing, like him and Fox, and let's not forget Malik Monk, who, kind of rises to the occasion. Those three dudes in the fourth quarter, to me, just if they're on your team, at least you don't have to be looking around at who's taking a shot.
Yeah. Hey, Sean, we'll wrap it up right where we started. As I mentioned, Kings about to play their 40th season, so we're gonna have some fun here in the days to come, picking the top 40 Kings. Could you just give us a nominee? And I know, like you said, you haven't said Aaron and listed it or anything, but somebody maybe a little bit off the beaten path. Obviously there's Webb, there's Mitch. Can you give us a nominee that for the Kings top 40 of all time that maybe we wouldn't think about top of mind?
Ooh, in the top, Ron Artest.
Okay.
Nice. Ron Artest, yeah, I think to me he's top 5.
Dang! Wow.
Yeah, in the Sacramento era, and I'm doing that pretty knee jerk, but I think
sure.
To me, he just the talent alone, what he meant, how he came into, Sacramento was dwindling. He comes in, he's like, we're making the playoffs. I looked at him as if I always looked at him if he had 3 heads on his shoulders. I mean, the guy was, he was, and people probably don't understand this when I say this. Ron Artest, especially at the time that he came to the Kings, was like the most normal athlete or even celebrity I probably ever met in my life at the time, because
very down to earth, huh?
You would never have guessed that Ron Artest would be a guy who worked at Circuit City, who really wanted to do that. And it was just like, no, he loves ball, but he's so normal for a guy who's got a screw loose. Like he was just incredible. And then they go out and make the playoffs, and him, Bonzi Wells together were just so much fun. So to me, I would throw him in there. I think the 1 through 4 and 5 is probably pretty easy for most people, but I think I'd probably have him in my top 5.
Wow, how about that, Sean?
Can I ask a question before I go? Because Kyle, you had me thinking, man. I got to ask both of you. What are your question marks? Because if I went Keegan Murray, and obviously speaking out of both sides of my mouth, I keep leaning back to what DeRozan can be and what this team looks like. Who did you guys identify?
To me, I think how Malik is going to be able to adapt, I should say, to having DeMar on the floor. I think that's an open question. I'm more concerned with the front court, but I think how Malik is how he's going to make those adjustments to having DeMar on the road. To me, that's a big question.
Yeah, and I'd probably throw in Kevin Huerter, because I don't know what we're going to get from him this upcoming season. Is he going to be here? Could he quite possibly be a starter at the 2? Is he going to be a rotation player? I think his role is so unknown right now. I think he's a big piece of trying to put together this Kings puzzle.
Totally. Yeah, it just shows, Mike Brown and that front office have a lot of question marks. There's one. Maybe you can identify one that might be king of the hill, and maybe that's it. But there's several for sure.
Thank you, Sean. We appreciate it very much.
You got it, guys. Anytime.
All right, Sean.
Make sure you watch him on Fox 40. Follow him on Twitter